Republicans in Texas and other states are attempting to redraw congressional districts mid-decade in an effort to rig the upcoming election. Unlike Texas, where Republican politicians rammed through maps after assigning law enforcement to trail their Democrat colleagues, every movement.
Excuse me, Mr. Berman.
By all means.
Assemblymember Patterson, state your point of order.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning.
State your point of order, sir.
Yes, we have been admonished for mentioning parties on.
Mr. Patterson, state your point of order. There's no explanation needed. What is the rule that is being violated?
Your rule that a person speaking may not mention political parties. I ask that the author no longer do that.
That is not a rule of this body. That is a rule of decorum. The issue with this particular measure is it affects political parties. We're going to allow that today. What I spoke with earlier was simply that you should not impugn the motives of your colleagues. Mr. Berman, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just last night, the Texas House passed their plan to rig the 2026 election. Earlier yesterday, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis demanded that his state is owed an extra congressional district right now. And you know that Trump will do everything he can to fulfill this outrageous request. Americans and Californians deserve better. And ACA 8, the Election Rigging Response Act, is our response to these undemocratic and un-American power grabs. Unlike Texas, where Republican politicians rammed through maps after assigning law enforcement to trail their Democrat colleagues' every movement, it is California voters who will have the final say whether or not these new district boundaries get used. Because here in California, we respect the will of the voters. After the 2030 census, ACA 8 returns all congressional district line drawing powers back to the Citizens Redistricting Commission. In addition, ACA 8 calls on Congress to pass legislation and propose a constitutional amendment to the U.S. Constitution to require the use of fair, independent, and nonpartisan redistricting in every state across the country. Now, here are some of the arguments we'll hear from our colleagues from across the aisle today. First, this was decided by voters who were eligible to vote in 2010, and we don't need to revisit it. At least half of the voter registration file is totally new in 2025. Over 10 million California voters who did not have the chance to vote on this and have their voices heard in 2010. Now, you might be wondering, who does that include? We got a couple of people on the floor today. My Republican colleagues from Tulare and Clovis, my Democrat colleagues from San Jose and LA, none of them were old enough to vote on this in 2010, and I think they should get the chance to vote on it this year. They will claim that this costs too much money. First, there is no cost too high to save our democracy. Second, the return on investment of this election is off the charts, something that would make the VCs in my district blush. Trump and his cronies have terrorized our communities. They have targeted our world-class institutions, trying to extract $1 billion from UCLA alone. They have decimated local economies. They've even extorted California-grown businesses like NVIDIA. And I have not heard one complaint from any colleague from across the aisle to these actions that have cost California billions and billions of dollars. They'll argue that there's no urgency to act. Wake up. The crisis is here and our democracy is under attack. President Trump is taking advice on our democracy from Vladimir Putin, someone who literally kills his political opponents. And he's not even trying to be quiet about this. He's bragging about this on national television, as if it's something to be proud of. This is the same guy who called elections officials in Georgia and demanded they find him 12,000 votes so he could win the state and stay in the White House. This is someone who earnestly talks about the possibility of serving a third term as president of the United States. And now, realizing that his policies are terribly unpopular and that voters will have a chance to express their opposition next year, he's now trying to rig the election to inoculate himself from the will of the voters and hold on to power. Now, this wouldn't be a problem If any Republican elected officials had a spine, like the Georgia elections officials did in 2020, to say, no, Mr. President, this is un-American, this is undemocratic, this is wrong, and we will not participate in your steamrolling of democracy. But that Republican elected official no longer exists. When it comes between standing up for your constituents, saving their health care, saving their food assistance, saving their fathers or daughters from being snatched off the streets by masked and unidentified thugs and flown to torture chambers in foreign countries, or basking in the orange glow of Mar-a-Lago, Republican politicians in California don't give it a second thought. They drop to their knees and they do whatever Donald Trump tells them to. There is currently no check on Trump in Washington, only sycophants who clap like seals at the circus. Please.
Assemblymember Gallagher, you are recognized.
The gentleman is, if I can call him a gentleman, is impugning the character of people on this floor, which you already admonished him and everyone in this room not to do. So maybe somebody will regulate, that decorum.
Assemblymember Gallagher, your point is well taken. Members, please be careful in your speech not to impugn the motives of other members. Mr. Berman, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is currently no check on Donald Trump in Washington, D.C. Only people who do whatever he demands that they do. But not here, not in California. California is responding to this emergency by empowering our voters with transparency, with respect for our independent commission, but with an unwavering will to act. I respectfully request your aye vote on ACA 8.
Thank you, Assemblymember Berman. Assemblymember Lackey, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the privilege to share with you a very powerful perspective. What we're spending time on at this particular moment, to me, is a bit disappointing. I will tell you that right now, what this body needs is to build trust with its constituency. Polls have overwhelmingly indicated that there's a lack of trust. And what we're considering on doing is feeding that lack of trust. I had a very respected colleague that I spoke with just recently who told me that this is all political. You can define it as you wish, but I can tell you, no matter what your position is on this thing, and we're going to be talking a lot about it, and there's going to be a lot of blah, 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 but I'm telling you, when it comes down to it, does this enhance trust with our people? We all admit that gerrymandering is controlled by people who have something to benefit. That is not what our people want. That's been very clearly stated by their vote. So why, no matter what the justification is, why would we engage in behavior that we know is considered unacceptable by those who elect us?
So my next question is, did you consider any alternative redistricting plans? I know as a committee member, there was no discussion, what I would call a rich discussion around the redistricting plan, the maps, or anything like that. So did you consider anything else?
Absolutely. That's why we did the substitute Monday and increased more Republicans.
And so that's why you added 12 increases? Okay. Thank you for that answer, sir. Did you express any concerns about the potential for racial gerrymandering? You know, one of the things I want to be clear, I want to be perfectly clear, that as an African American here in the chamber, a chamber I want to continue to have respect for, we weren't asked any questions and or engaged in the process at all. Do you believe that's fair?
Are you talking about you, or are you talking about others?
I'm talking about the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, who potentially will lose 2 seats. Okay. I'm talking about an interest group that I thought had a role, an important role in this process.
You absolutely did, and Representative, You and I know each other, but you left 17 to 18 days. You left 17 to 18 days, you could have sat with me. You left 7 to 18 days leaving this state. My view, the public could have been involved, the whole caucus could have been involved, all 150 people could have been involved.
With all due respect,
I'm not
Representative Hunter,
finished.
now let me get
You're not
finished.
letting me talk. You're the back mic, you asked the question, I get to talk.
On July 24th, there was a public hearing in Austin, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
On July 26th, there was a public hearing in Houston, correct?
That's Saturday, yes.
And on July 28th, there was a hearing in Arlington, Texas, correct?
That evening in Arlington.
Okay, when did the maps drop?
I believe the maps were filed Wednesday.
So Wednesday, and then you had a hearing the next day with people who could not weigh in on a yay or a nay. It's my understanding those maps were not released until after the public hearings. Is that true or false?
Well, you're wrong because the hearing was Friday, not Thursday.
We had several hearings before the maps were dropped. Would you agree with that?
Ma'am, you just said the map was dropped and then we heard it. The fact is, it was filed that Wednesday. The hearing was Friday. Let's get the specifics down. And I've answered everything to you in committee that I'm answering here. Tuesday, after the Arlington hearing, the chairman of the committee asked me if I would present the bill to this body, which I said yes. Number two, I did not see or get the information till that Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, we filed the bill.
Representative Hunter, let's be clear. There were public hearings held without any maps. Is that true?
Yes.
Just before the bill vote out, those maps were dropped at that time, correct? Because it was voted out on that Saturday morning.
The bill was voted on Saturday.
Saturday morning.